You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health themes from cinema, television, and popular culture. I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a filmmaker and professor, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dr. Joshua Jones, who, as well as being the inspiration for both Dr. Frankenstein and the creature, is a general and forensic psychiatrist.
Ouch, Jeff. I think that kind of hurts. But
I mean, it used to hurt before Jacob Elordi was the creature, and now it's like,
I have some deep thoughts on that. I'm super excited to dive into this one today, Jeff. Frankenstein is full and always has been full of great mental health themes and just psychology in general. So let's get moving, man.
Let's get cracking. Okay, we want you to start your week off right with our podcast. So we drop a new episode every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch our hottest and spiciest clips and now full episodes on the YouTubes. Josh, today we're talking about Frankenstein. And I got to tell you, man, this is one of those situations where I'm shocked at what I didn't know. My experience and knowledge of Frankenstein was sort of limited to the tropes that we talked about from the 1931 Universal movie,
Sure.
and all the uses of Frankenstein through popular culture. Man, I had no idea what the actual Frankenstein myth was.
Sure.
I was blown away. And so when we watched the movie, I was like, oh, what an interesting take on Frankenstein. And then I decided to listen to the audiobook, and I'm like, wait a minute, this was a faithful adaptation to the book. I had no idea what the Frankenstein myth was actually about. So I'm super excited to get into that part of it. If you haven't seen it, Victor Frankenstein, haunted by his mother's death, uses forbidden science to create a living being from corpses, then recoils in horror and abandons it. Alone and rejected, the creature grows into a self-aware outcast, and their story spirals towards tragedy in the Arctic as creator and creation collide. Josh, this is so rife with mental health topics. I don't think we could even get to it in one podcast, but tell us what we're going to scratch the surface of today.
What this is mostly about, and what we're going to talk about, all the ramifications, both for the person who has the diagnosis himself and also for their family, is narcissistic personality disorder. We're going to talk today about a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention, and that is the effect of the narcissistic personality disorder on the offspring of the person who has it. Jeff, we're also going to talk about syphilis, which was a very big deal back in the day.
Which neither of us have had, I don't think.
And we're also going to talk about the power of reconciliation.
So, Josh, we haven't had a sponsor in a while, but we do have a sponsor this week, which I'm very excited about. We're getting into a little bit of a political season. I'm sure you started to notice texts and emails from politicians asking for money. Well, as you know, I sort of lean Democrat, lean that way.
Lean.
Hardcore lean. And so when ex-senator and SNL alum Al Franken reached out to see if he could sponsor us, I said, of course. So Al is running for office again, and he needs to raise money right now. So right now, if you donate to his campaign, and we'll put a link in the description, he will send you a commemorative beer mug. You know, a nice little mug. You could use it for coffee if you want, but it is a beer mug. So help Al join the fight to save democracy and donate today, and he will send you for free the Al Frankenstein. I hope Al does well. So that's our sponsor of the week.
Just like the creature, his campaign is probably already also on life support.
Oof. I'd vote for him. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive right in. Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, or if you haven't read the book, and I'm going to give you the long plot summary here because it is not what you think. Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant but emotionally wrecked scientist, is consumed by the idea that death is a problem that can be solved. After losing his mother, which is true in the film but not the book, his grief curdles into obsession and he throws himself into forbidden experiments, building a living being from stolen bodies and electrical science. Mostly from dead bodies. He's not out there stealing, live people, killing them and stealing their parts. It's stolen dead bodies. I don't know why that makes a difference to me, but it does. When the creature finally opens its eyes, Victor is instantly horrified by what he's done, and instead of caring for the life he created, he abandons it. The creature escapes into the world like a newborn trapped in an adult body, confused, lonely, and desperate for connection. But everywhere it turns, people respond with fear, disgust, and violence, teaching it that existence comes with punishment. As time passes, the creature begins to understand language, beauty, and human tenderness, and also human cruelty. It traces its suffering back to one person, Victor, the father who made it and ran away. When the creature finally confronts him, it doesn't just want revenge, it wants meaning. It wants to know its purpose, and it wants to be loved. Victor, meanwhile, tries to outrun his guilt, but the consequences of his creation keep tightening around his life, dragging the innocent people he loves into the fallout, leading to most of their deaths. Their relationship becomes a tragic chase towards the Arctic, two beings bound together by the same curse, until, in Del Toro's version, the story lands not only on horror, but on something stranger and more painful, the possibility of recognition, forgiveness, and a final bittersweet peace. I want to quickly just address all the misconceptions of Frankenstein to kind of frame for the audience kind of what we're talking about. Because I did think that this was such a fascinating difference from pop culture. So here's some of the misconceptions about Frankenstein. So the book is about a creator and his creation pursuing each other all over the world and debating meaning and purpose. The 1931 movie that most people think of Frankenstein is one location, a monster is born, it's Frankenstein's monster. And in the book and in Del Toro's movie, it's much more of a creature. It's not this monstrous thing. I was really disappointed that there was no villagers with pitchforks in either the book or Del Toro's film. That's what I think of when I think of Frankenstein. And that was straight drawn out of the 1931 movie and does not fit thematically with the book at all. This notion of the villagers, like, burning him down, banded together. It's a completely different experience. It's a completely different theme. Shelley's monster is articulate and philosophical. And in the 1931 movie, the monster can basically just say, "Arr!" Played by Boris Karloff. I think that Del Toro takes it one step further. And in his movie, the monster does become far more intelligent, but it starts out the way that a child would. And so we see the growth of the monster as humans grow and develop. There's no Igor in the book or in Del Toro's movie. Igor is a famous character in monster lore that we all know and love. In the 1931 movie, he brings the wrong brain. He brings a criminal brain, which we're like, oh, the monster is going to be a killer. We need to kill it. None of that in Mary Shelley's book. I can't get over how lied to I was about what the Frankenstein myth was. The book was so good. And by the way, narrated by Dan Stevens. God, Dan Stevens is a heck of a narrator. So the book is definitely worth listening to or reading if you haven't done so. Shocked by how different it was from the Frankenstein that I think most people know.
Yeah, Jeff, there are some other important differences I think as well, especially as we start to talk about some of the science and the medicine and the mental health issues. You got to remember the time in which this book was written. Mary Shelley wrote it in the early 1800s. Mm-hmm. She actually didn't even talk about electricity as being the thing that animated the creature. Right. It was this kind of unknown humor. At that time, we were still very much in the dark about how the body worked. And the character of Victor
also in the dark because we didn't have electricity. We were very much in the dark without lights.
The only thing you could read by was an angry villager with a torch. It was the only source of light in the night. But the Victor Frankenstein character was inspired by a kind of doctor back in the day called an anatomist. And these were people who were super curious about what was actually inside the body and would go to great lengths, criminal lengths even, to procure bodies, a lot like Victor Frankenstein did, to then dissect them and figure out what was actually going on. We owe these men, they were almost exclusively men, a great debt for them pushing the boundaries of what was considered okay, what was considered holy at the time, to be able to figure out what was going on in the body. It was that spirit of narcissism that these men were kind of tampering with what was known, a dogma about what was known about the body, that we really started to learn about the human body.
Yeah. Let's actually dive right into narcissism because let's talk about Victor Frankenstein. Let's talk about his diagnosis. But before you do, Josh, because that's an interesting thing you just said, just remind the audience what his diagnosis is, but also the difference between healthy and not healthy narcissism. Because Victor's was unhealthy, but there is healthy narcissism. So tell me that and then dive into Victor.
Okay. So healthy narcissism, I think you can also call confidence, right? You need to believe that you are going to be able to do something. And if you want to push the boundaries, if you want to be, if you want to be something, if you want to get outside yourself, you have to have a level of confidence or narcissism, which really means self-love, to think, I can do this. But for a non-pathologic person, that level of narcissism is also balanced by doubt, by wonder, if one can do it, by imposter syndrome. But you have to have a level of healthy narcissism to push ahead.
Well, and by empathy, correct?
And empathy. When we talk about narcissistic personality disorder, which we'll talk about right now, you lose that empathy. So empathy.
But a healthy narcissist can look past what they want to see how it might be affecting somebody else.
Exactly.
And an unhealthy narcissist can't do that.
Exactly.
Or doesn't easily do that.
So a perfect example of a healthy narcissist would be
Dr. Joshua Jones.
Right. I was going to say, or a surgeon or a fighter pilot, right? Sure. We talked about this first in our podcast. Go back and listen to our Top Gun Maverick episode to really hear about healthy narcissism. You want your fighter pilots to be like, I can do this.
Right.
Even when it's like damn near impossible, but not lose the empathy to understand how their actions are going to impact others. That's where your narcissistic personality disorder comes in.
Yeah.
And that's what Victor Frankenstein shows throughout the movie. He's a little more narcissistic to a pathologic degree in the movie than in the book or in some other adaptations. I think it really works here.
Yeah.
And I think we should take a really deep dive into it, Jeff.
Yeah, take me on that journey, Josh. So what are the interesting differences between the book and the Del Toro film? And from now on, I'm just going to call it the book and the movie. We're not going to talk about the 1931 Universal movie anymore. It'll be the book and the movie. One of the interesting differences was Victor's reason for wanting to create the creature came from the death of his mother and wanting to beat death. That wasn't in the book. I don't know that it added a ton, but I think that modern viewers want there to always be sort of a reason and an impetus or, an inciting incident for something. But that doesn't make it any less narcissistic in his endeavor, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, most people with narcissistic personality disorder have some form of childhood trauma or some form of abuse against them, which Dr. Frankenstein did,
right.
The loss of his mother, but also the abusive practices, emotionally and physically abusive practices of his father.
Which is where he kind of models his own treatment of the creature.
Yes, the generational pay it forward. Now, mind you, everyone who experiences trauma as a child is not going to develop narcissistic personality disorder. Everybody who experiences trauma as a child does not necessarily end up developing a mental health diagnosis. But in this prototypical and obviously movie case, he did, and it makes a lot of sense. So, Jeff, as you pointed out, Victor's desire to cure death was spawned by his mom's death, but he views this as a personal challenge to himself.
Right.
And not a humanitarian mission. And that really kind of typifies this God complex and his grandiosity. He refused to hide. He pushed this out in front of everybody, right? He brought this in front of the tribunal at the medical college instead of hiding it in secrecy like he did in the book. And he's playing God. Anytime you hear somebody being accused of playing God, it should trigger in you, oh, I wonder if this person's a narcissist, because it really speaks of the desire to not just push past what you are as a human, but to master it for your own devices and not necessarily to be good to others.
Okay, so Josh, the narcissism part makes a lot of sense to me as a doctor. A lot of doctors are narcissists. That's going to carry over into, not good narcissism pretty easily. But one of the components that you talk a lot about is the lack of empathy. And I think that's going to help us to sort of shape the rest of the conversation about his relationship with the creature, but also with his friends. We see his lack of empathy in the way that he treats his friends and even his possible love interest. What in the movie can you point to that, that's not normal empathy? That's narcissistic personality disorder showing itself rather than feeling that sense of empathy that we should be feeling.
Yeah, he treats the other three main characters that he interacts with as objects.
Right.
Pure and simple. And we can just tick them off. He treats Elizabeth as an extension of himself. Her only value to him, actually, well, two things. One, he only really likes her at the beginning because his brother possesses her and not him.
Right.
But then he only really likes her because she's special enough to see how special he is. She's the only one to appreciate how amazing he is.
Yeah.
And I do like...
It's so like... I don't know. That's clean. That one makes so much sense to me, and I see that all the time. And I think that we all are a little bit guilty of that. Of like, oh, finally someone sees the real me, and it's like, okay, well, you're not all that special.
Right. We don't really see that here because the relationship doesn't burgeon long enough. But the real trap there in seeing how special a narcissist is that you can't keep up that specialness, that valuation of their specialness the whole time. Sooner or later, you will disappoint the narcissist.
Right.
Oh, you're dumb and worthless now because you're not seeing how special I continue to be.
Right.
Secondly, his relationship with Herr Harlander is purely transactional. When his benefactor Harlander dies, kind of at Victor's hand,
Right.
He doesn't mourn him at all. This guy was his friend and mentor for years. The film portrays his mourning of him as an asset and a lost opportunity for funding and resources, and not even really responding to Elizabeth's grief about losing her uncle.
Right. So at some point in the movie, Elizabeth dies. And Victor Frankenstein shoots her, but he blames her death on the creature. Like, I wouldn't have shot her. I was aiming for you. Victor is so incredibly haunted by all of his mistakes. He just can't tell you what any of them are.
Right. Yeah, they must be monumental mistakes.
Oh, he makes the biggest mistakes.
The biggest, the best, the bigliest mistakes. Really.
I make the biggest mistakes. No one's ever seen mistakes like I can make. I was talking to someone, tears running down their face. Oh, that was a huge mistake done. I know, but it wasn't my fault.
And Jeff, finally, not the biggest example of narcissism, but the one that is most impactful generationally is the way he treats his offspring, the creature. After bringing the creature to life, Victor's initial wonder quickly turns to frustrated contempt.
Right.
It's so quick to turn to contempt that he doesn't actually go down the pathways, the natural pathways, of teaching him life, which we find out later, the creature is very easy to learn.
Right.
He learns basically on his own, but because he doesn't respond in the way that Victor wants, he basically discards the creature.
That point is very well made in two other scenes of the movie. One, he just wants the creature to say some other word other than Victor, and the creature can't. And it's what leads Victor to like burn his whole house down. It's like, just say one word and I'll save you. Just say one other word and I'll save you. And Elizabeth makes the point. Maybe that word means everything to the monster. And it is the first time that a baby says dada or mama. That's what it is, but Victor can't see it. That's one of those moments really well done. And then in the other is the monster forms a familial and paternal relationship with the blind villager.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what they call the creature.
The spirit of the forest.
Yeah, the spirit of the forest. The blind man knows there's something living out in their barn. And then when everybody leaves, he's like, come on in, spirit of the forest, and treats him very well. And their creature responds in kind. I don't know if that was in the book, but I thought that was a great part of the movie just to show, hey, yeah, with a little bit of love and compassion, this creature can become not a monster. This creature can become something capable of love and all these things. Like, we do just want a little bit of love.
There was a subplot in the book around that, where the creature did watch and learn from a family while hiding, and then revealed himself to the blind father in the book, and they became friends. And then, the misperception of what was going on and the misunderstanding when he was standing over the young daughter in the book led the other family members to chase him away. So very similar.
Right.
A great theme.
I do want to talk about the relationship a little more of Frankenstein and the creature, but does the creature have a diagnosis?
Well, the creature certainly suffers from trauma. I was thinking about this and wondering if I could apply something like, reactive attachment disorder or disinhibited social engagement disorder, and I'm not going to. I think it's enough to say the creature was traumatized. There's not a diagnosis for this, but what the creature is suffering from is the creature is suffering from the ruptured attachment trauma of being raised by a personality disordered parent.
Okay.
So that's the relationship, Jeff, between Frankenstein and the creature. So Frankenstein rejects the creature. Frankenstein rejects his child because the child isn't fulfilling his needs.
One of the things we've teased so far is, you obviously have Victor, you have the creature, but this movie and the book is really about the relationship between this person with narcissistic personality disorder and their offspring.
Correct.
This is a pretty common relationship that we see even today. Did this movie accurately portray what happens to a child who is the child of someone with the narcissistic personality disorder or with any sort of personality disorder?
It really did. For folks who have cluster B personality disorders, so like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline, antisocial, histrionic, this is a pretty good portrayal. The child isn't meeting the parent's needs.
Right.
You create the child, and you saw the amazement, the wonder, the anticipation of Victor Frankenstein for creating the child. And then once the child's there, doesn't meet that person's very self-centered, empathic-less needs, and the child is rejected.
Right.
And unfortunately, we see that very often in folks with these types of personality disorders and their offspring. Not uniformly. I don't want to paint too broad a picture.
I get it. Yeah.
There are some people with personality disorders who can end up learning very good skills and becoming good parents.
Right.
But by and large, that's kind of the pattern we see. We see the rejection of the child. And in many cases, the dynamic occurs, as portrayed in the film, where the child ends up, in some regards, raising themselves.
Right.
And learning from others things that the child expects and nature probably leads to, having been taught by the parent as opposed to a surrogate.
One of the major differences between the book and the movie is the ending. In both the book and the movie, Victor ends up pursuing the creature across the frozen tundra. The inciting incident for that is the same. It's the death of Elizabeth, and the creature's sort of wanting to exile himself while also drawing Victor into this exile. I don't think that that's actually what is happening there. I think that the monster feels so terrible about all the abuse that it feels like it's feeling, and I chose those words carefully, so it decides to run away. And he leaves all these clues so that Victor can follow. And I don't think it's because he's wanting to torture Victor. I think it's because he's wanting Victor to pursue him. It's because he wants Victor to come after him. I remember running away as a kid. I couldn't get farther than the driveway before I would look back to see if mom was watching. I would feel so terrible and so lonely at the end of the driveway, go back in, reconcile with mom, and then play 2 miles away in the woods for the rest of the day. I remember I ran away once and mom had packed me a sandwich, which was her own way of torturing me. I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to run away, you should probably have a sandwich. And I got to the end of the driveway and ate my sandwich. I was like, I think I'll camp here for the night.
I remember that day.
Yeah. And so the creature leaving all these clues is really just him wanting the father to pursue. But in the end of the movie, there is a reconciliation that happens, and Victor finally embraces him as his son, and it makes, the monster feel better. In the book, that's not what happens. In the book, Victor just dies, and the monster decides he's going to try and burn himself alive and kill himself. But I thought that reconciliation was interesting for 2 reasons, and tell me what I'm getting right and wrong here. It is honest that reconciliation is that easy for a child. I think that is true. But I don't think that a narcissist on their deathbed is actually being honest when that reconciliation happens. Talk to me about both of those.
Yeah, and I thought a lot about both of these topics over the years for a couple reasons. One, is reconciliation that easy for a child? It depends on their stage. It depends on how abused they are. But yeah, kids want reconciliation. It is in many ways that easy for a child. In the moment doesn't mean that there aren't scars that are left. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that are going to come up later in life. But yeah, I mean, I think any of us who are parents who've done something kind of crappy to our kid, mostly on accident, and we go back and we say, oh, we're sorry, and let's make it up to you. Yeah, it does get over that fast. You reach the end of the driveway, you stop being upset, and you come back and you reconcile. I think that does happen. The second question you asked, is the deathbed apology from a narcissist real? That's an amazing question.
I guess what I mean, though, when I talk about the reconciliation for the kid is that even if you have years and years of anger, all you're ever really looking for is that little kernel of love. And so that's what I mean by reconciliation for the child can be that easy. Because you really do just want one thing. And as soon as you get it, it just unlocks. It's the key that unlocks like this massive relief for children. And it's that everybody wants to be loved. Until people give up that feeling, I think as soon as they're shown some love, they're going to be flooded with those emotions, which is why I think reconciliation is so easy for the one who's sort of been wronged. Do you think that's accurate?
I think that is accurate, Jeff. Where it becomes much more complex is as the years tick on.
Right.
And that child becomes the adult child of the narcissist.
Okay.
And then things get more complicated. They start to ask the question, was this reconciliation, was this apology real? And I actually get asked this question by my patients who are the survivors of, a narcissistic parent who then have died. And they will ask me, very similar to what happened with the creature and Victor on their deathbed, can this person really change? They told me they loved me. They told me they were sorry, and then they died. Could the person really change? Is this real? And my answer to them is, it is as real as the surviving person wants it to be.
Yeah, and I understand why you would say that, but I could not disagree with it more.
And you are entitled to your very wrong opinion.
Well, go ahead and talk about it, though. Like, why does the person who's hearing the words get to choose the intention of the person who said them?
Because the person who said them's dead and gone.
Right.
And it doesn't matter.
That's where I disagree with you.
Not only does it not matter, but you will also never know. You and only you, the survivor, gets to decide how real those words were.
Do you think that that's ever going to satisfy somebody, though?
Yes. I know it does because it has satisfied people before.
It wouldn't satisfy me. And I get what you're saying. And look,
not at first. It didn't satisfy me at first, and it doesn't satisfy people at first at all. You have to decide how you're going to take it. You cannot ask the person. It doesn't matter to them. They're dead.
Right.
It does not matter to Victor Frankenstein whether he meant it or not. He's dead. And I thought that this was a very powerful message from Victor Frankenstein to the creature that you don't see in the book, but you do see in the movie. His point to him was, because the monster, of course, was bemoaning how he cannot die. And Victor's point to him was, well, then you get to choose how to live.
Right.
If you can't die, you must then choose how you live. And I think that is the most important message of this movie, is whatever your plight is, whatever you're left with as the child of a narcissistic parent, you're the one who gets to choose what you do with that. You're the one who gets to choose what you do with the bedside confession or apology.
Okay, and I think we're getting somewhere there because, yes, you get to choose how to live. And that message is true even before the narcissist dies. And I think that that's my point to anyone, who's possibly listening, where they're like, they are the child of a narcissist. They're the child of a parent who, isn't giving them the love that they want. You got to deal with that now, even while your parent is alive. And you just have to realize, you might never get that love, and you need to function anyway and not wait around to receive that love. You have to just learn to be okay not having that love. Decide, hey, that's not the way that I want to be. I'm not going to raise my kids that same way. And so that's, I think, my issue with the deathbed reconciliation. Yes, it might help you feel better down the line. It might help you feel better. But I don't know that it's as real as, you know what? My dad or my mom was a narcissist. That's okay. That's who they were. I don't have to be that way. And whether or not they, in the end, love me or not, has nothing to do with the way that I live my life. That feels like a healthier way, sort of adapting to it than, oh, yeah, no, absolutely. They in the end love me. Yeah, I can hang my hat on that. Nope, they said they did. And that's it. And sort of like living with that thing that in the back of your mind, you have to know is a little bit of a lie, or you're just uncertain about it. Remove the uncertainty and just realize, yeah, I was the child of a narcissist.
That's an answer to a different question. I was answering the question, what do you do if you get that bedside reconciliation? But I also agree with you 100%. Most people who have a narcissistic parent aren't going to get that. And so you do have to decide before that how you're going to go forward, how you're going to live with living. That's something that I counsel a lot of my depressed patients about, especially those who, end up reaching me. They have treatment-resistant depression. Treatments are working. They still feel depressed. How are you going to live with living? How are you going to make the best of it? I think that's kind of a question everyone has to answer at some point in their lives.
Yeah. Do you think mom or dad were narcissists?
Not to the degree of having narcissistic personality disorder. No, I don't. And I spent a tremendous amount of time talking to therapists about it and also thinking about it myself. They had some tendencies for sure. Everyone does.
Sure.
I don't think so.
Mom was such a soup of mental, not disorders, but just like, she just had a tough life. And that tough life led to a lot of patchwork here and there on her psyche.
Yes.
And so there were just times where she would just fly off the handle with something. I was like, where did that come from? We've been sitting there, I'd eating my Cheerios. And it's like, oh, how's your day, Jeff? I'm like, oh, it's good. I have this planned. Well, I just want you to finish college. It's like, what? Where did that even come from?
Another difference between the book and the movie that I think is worth talking about is the role of Elizabeth. In the book, Elizabeth is really just the object of desire later, and she doesn't have a relationship with the creature. In fact, the creature kills her to get at Victor, to harm him, to provide the cruelty.
In the book.
In the book. And the movie, of course, Mia Goth's character, Elizabeth, finds the creature, starts to have a friendship with him. That's the thing that really, really turned Victor, I think, against the creature. Of course, Elizabeth saw the beauty in the creature. She said, oh, underneath it all, you are Jacob Elordi. That is beautiful.
This is one of those points that I thought was really fascinating. It goes back to one of my favorite adages of all time. The child who's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. In the 1931 movie, the monster is not monstrous. He's really just a victim of the perception of people. But in Mary Shelley's book, the creature does kill some people, which makes him a little bit monstrous. The question of what is the responsibility of the parent to show kindness, knowing that if you don't show kindness, it's going to lead to your child hurting people. And it reminds me of one of my favorite psychological sayings I learned from one of my psychologists: hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And I think that there's really something to that. I applaud Del Toro for taking that out of his movie and, not having him, be violent really towards anybody. I think that Mary Shelley's version is a little more accurate. Yeah, that monster's probably going to turn violent at some point, because it's not feeling any love. And we're going to reach out and hurt people when we don't get any love. And that doesn't excuse the nature of someone's, violent actions. But I thought that was an interesting difference between the book and the movie.
The other difference that I just mentioned that speaks right to this was the intervention of the Elizabeth character.
Right.
While the monster was chained up underneath Frankenstein's keep in the universe of the movie, probably was the love, the care, the attachment that allowed the monster to not be as monstrous as in the book.
Right. Yeah. That's a point well made. Yeah. I want to talk about Jacob Elordi just for a second, because I've had an inappropriate diagnosis of Jacob Elordi since I was introduced to him. So I was first introduced to him through Euphoria. And I was like, oh, God, here's just some, pretty boy who's playing a jerk. Not particularly interesting. And then he's incredible in Euphoria. So I'm like, okay, the guy's got a little bit of acting talent, but, whatever. And then I saw him in Saltburn. And I was like, oh, man, he's really playing a pretty deep character here and is really kind. And then I saw him play the monster, and he just he's amazing. And the point is, he's just amazing in everything he does. And it got me thinking, like, imagine the casting director who didn't know that Jacob Elordi was any of these things ever passing on him. I just can't imagine that. Like, he's so good looking and he's so talented. Who was the person who discovered Jacob Elordi? It's like if you're a casting director and you're walking down the street and Jacob just walks by you, you would have to stop him and be like, hey, I've got a part for you. Oh, what is it? Doesn't matter. It's the very next thing I cast. I've got a part for you. Like, he's just so sexy and so talented that, like, nobody discovered Jacob Elordi. He was born and then people opened their eyes and looked at him. And it kind of reminds me of the Saturday Night Live sketch with Chris Hemsworth, where he's like, oh, I wasn't an overnight success. It took me days. And it's like, that must have been the way it was for Jacob Elordi. I saw a news article the other day about, like, he went to talk to Amazon about being the next Bond. And it's like, he's obviously the next James Bond. Like, he should be the next James Bond. And before I knew about him, like, there was some talk about, like, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and, like, that's just not a good choice. But there's been some debate. But now that, like, Jacob Elordi has entered the chat, it's like, just make him the next Bond. He's obviously meant to be the next James Bond. But, like, you don't discover someone like Jacob Elordi. And if you ever were a casting director, it's like, well, he's just not quite right. You're not doing your job. Like, all that guy needs to do is just walk in the room.
I agree. I think he's a great actor. He, of course, is nominated for this role in Frankenstein for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. One of the things that really impressed me with this role was his physical acting.
Yeah.
Just the body control. Yeah. To have the creature enter the uncanny valley, right? I mean, he's not quite human. He's not human enough for us to be kind of compelled to see him as kind of like an anime character or something like that, which is really cute. But there is this grotesqueness about him, even though it's Jacob Elordi, that is really compelling and off-putting. So, yeah, completely agree. Huge star.
And it's like, oh, he's this creature, but it's like he's still kind of sexy. It's just a really sexy creature. It's like, well.
He reminded me of the proto-alien characters from the Alien Prometheus.
The makers.
Yeah, the makers. Just these muscular, defined,
totally albino,
genitalless guys. But yeah.
Do you think the creature had a huge dong or not? Because that would have been a choice. That would have been a choice of Victor's. Do you think it was half a centimeter shorter than Victor's?
It definitely wasn't longer. That's for sure. There'd be no way. That's a great narcissistic personality disorder question. There would be no way it could be bigger. I'm surprised that the creature was bigger than Victor. I don't think that, for that level of narcissism. Actually, I think that could go either way. You'd be like, I'm not making him bigger than me, or I'm making him the biggest.
I think it would be I'm making him the biggest. I think that if there really was. Because Victor's, I will make him bigger than anyone.
Sure.
Because there are people who are taller than Victor. I think the narcissist in that case would be like, well, I will make him larger than anyone. My son will be larger than anyone. And gets back to, a couple episodes ago, we talked about, what if? What if a narcissist could build the perfect human? How would he build them? That's a very interesting what if, which is kind of explored here. Josh, those are mainly the things I wanted to talk about.
Jeff, I want to do a tiny little side quest here about the Herr Harlander character, who, of course, is played by Christoph Waltz, and, amazing as always. They gave that character syphilis. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about it, because we don't think a lot about syphilis now, but they thought a lot about it back then. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease. It's spread by bacteria. It was widespread at the time.
Okay.
Fortunately, now, it's very easily treated in early stages by antibiotics, but it was once known as the Great Imitator because in its different stages of infection, of chronic infection, it looked like a bunch of different diseases. I bring this up because I didn't love the fact they tried to make Herr Harlander's motivation be that he had syphilis.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't like it is that even though he showed that he was losing hair, which is in the second stage of syphilis, they would have even known back then that it was many years between the second stage of syphilis and the third stage of syphilis, called tertiary syphilis, in which it really affects your brain,
Right.
And you can become psychotic and demented, they would have known that there were many years between that.
Sure.
So his motivation that I am dying didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Was he dying from it? Yes. Was he dying like today now?
Right.
No.
Right.
So I didn't love that.
Yeah, that's a you thing. I think for everybody else, that's totally fine because it's a ticking clock. All they're doing there is trying to give you a ticking clock that's based somewhat in a scientific reality. So sure, that's the truth of syphilis. But for the rest of us, it's like, oh, he's got a disease and we die from diseases. So there's a ticking clock for, his motivation.
Jeff, this topic is tearing up my syphilis truther chat, okay? Just destroying us.
Your syphilis Reddit subreddit thread where you've got, what, six or seven people, but 3 of them are you with different accounts?
Well, only 5 now.
Oh, sorry.
The point is, if you think you get exposed to syphilis, go talk to a doctor. It's very easily treated with antibiotics.
Don't they think that that's what killed Capone in prison?
Yeah. They don't think. They know.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Can we ever really know anything, Josh? Can we ever really trust doctors?
No. Yes. It's one of those. All right, Jeff. Obviously, this movie is not the first adaptation of Frankenstein. Great book to adapt. As you pointed out, the 1931 adaptation was very different than the book. How come?
Yeah, so after I learned the massive differences, I decided to look into that because I'm fascinated at why people make the choices that they make in Hollywood. And the very short answer is, I think that the book would have been too expensive to adapt. When we're looking at possibly adapting books, and I talked about this a little bit with Moneyball, we want to sort of bring out the themes, but everything else is sort of up to the individual. When we're making this adaptation, they were thinking, we want to create a monster movie. We want there to be a monster. We're not particularly interested in telling a story of a creature who ends up being great at philosophy and who can read Dante's Inferno. We're interested in one location, something very easy to film. We build one set and we can yell, "It's alive!" And you think about things from a film sort of context and what's going to do well on film versus what is sort of true to the book. Now we have the ability, and obviously Guillermo del Toro can do what he wants. And so he wanted to do a faithful adaptation that takes place in many different locations, et cetera, et cetera. But in 1931, you're really just looking at like what's going to put butts in seats. All right, there's a monster. Let's make him monstrous. How do we get this down to one location? And so that's why the decision were made. It's a really interesting question, though, as to do you need to faithfully adapt something? The answer is no. You don't have to. And it's not particularly all that fun to do. No Country for Old Men is one of the only faithful adaptations that I know of. Everything else, you do have to adapt to a new medium. So I'm not surprised that they adapted it the way that they did, but I'm also really glad that we did get a faithful adaptation in the end from Guillermo del Toro, because I think it's a much more interesting story of the narcissist and his son, the narcissist and his creation. It's a much more powerful theme to talk about fathers and sons than it is a monster. But when you ask people, what is Frankenstein about? Well, there's the real monster who's the scientist, and there's the victim who's his creation, and the townspeople are afraid of the unknown. That's the theme that we think of when we think of Frankenstein, is people are afraid of the unknown, and they end up burning it down. That's not at all true in the book. That theme isn't really explored at all in the book. It's much more about the relationship of father and son. It's a fine theme, but it's not a theme from the book.
Oh, you did a little Christopher Walken there.
It's a fine theme.
And Jeff, remind me, do you think theme's important? I forget.
Oh, fuck off.
The other thing that the makers of the 1931 version of Frankenstein didn't have to deal with is they didn't have to deal with a bunch of rabid online devotees of the original source material, making sure that everything was done as faithfully as possible.
God, Josh, I feel so bad for Craig Mazin and trying to adapt Last of Us Season 2. And he kind of talked about it in advance. He's like, look, guys, I'm doing an adaptation here. We're going to do the best we can. But he just got lit up by the people who loved the game. And it's like, guys, the sequel game was not that good. So he needed to make some changes to it. And he didn't change it enough to make it great television, but he changed it too much that it infuriated the people who loved the original, that really fell kind of flat on its face. But it's like, adaptations are tough in the modern world where you have all these. No, Victor would have worn a pin on the right side of his jacket, not the left side. It's crazy. But also, you kind of want to piss those people off a little bit because they drive engagement. Nothing engages people like anger. All right, Josh, so we got a top 5 for the week.
Since we talked quite a bit about the differences in the adaptations between the 2025 version, the 1931 version, we didn't even talk about Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein adaptation. I decided that we're going to do a list of the top 5 most faithful movie adaptations of all time.
Okay. This is great. I love that this is coming from you and not me. It makes me nervous that I'm going to be not needed soon. So, okay, this is the top 5 list, as always, that nobody asked for of the most faithful book-to-movie adaptations. Any honorable mentions, Josh?
Jeff, just for you, I do have 2 honorable mentions this time. All right. So one honorable mention, we're going to go with The Shawshank Redemption from 1994.
Okay.
It expands a bit on Stephen King's novella, and this is why it didn't make it into the top 5. It captures the soul of the story so perfectly that King himself probably forgets which parts he wrote and which parts Frank Darabont added. It's the gold standard for making a movie better than the book, while staying exactly like the book.
Love it. I can't believe it's not higher. I'm excited to see what the top 5 are.
Well, second honorable mention is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas from 1998.
Ooh, well done.
Yeah. No, so Terry Gilliam treats Hunter S. Thompson's prose like Holy Scripture. Every piece of narration is pulled straight from the book, proving the only way to adapt gonzo journalism is to let the author do all the talking while you just point a camera at Johnny Depp's bucket hat.
Yeah, but also Benicio del Toro crushed it in that movie. I remember being really impressed by that movie when I was, 18. Great honorable mentions. Wow. Okay, so let's go with number 5.
Okay, number 5, Jeff, is a movie I didn't like, but it definitely deserves a spot here. From 2006, it's A Scanner Darkly.
Okay.
So Richard Linklater used what he called interpolated rotoscoping to make the movie look like a fever dream. Right. It's the only way to accurately adapt Philip K. Dick's book. The dialogue and the crushing paranoia are pulled directly from the pages. It's so faithful that you feel like you're actually losing your mind.
Wow. Okay. Great. Number 5. Number 4.
Number 4 is one for the kids, Holes from 2003. So usually Disney adaptations involve a talking animal, a musical number.
Sure.
But for Holes, they let the author, Louis Sacker, write the script. It's so accurate that it even includes the weird flashbacks and the surprisingly detailed legal technicalities of digging holes.
Interesting.
Yeah. You could watch the movie or you could read the book and your 5th grade teacher wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
Number 3 is from 1987, The Princess Bride. Beloved movie.
I didn't know it was a faithful adaptation.
Incredibly faithful. And that's what you get when you allow the guy who wrote the book, William Goldman, to also write the screenplay. It's a word-for-word translation minus the 100-page tangent about the history of Florinese trees.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments in A Princess Bride is when they're having the duel of wits. And he says the famous line, "Never met with a Thethilian when death is on the line." But what he says right before that, you forgot one of the major rules. First, never fight a land war in Asia. But the second, man, it's like, yeah, you never fight a land war in Asia. That is true. But he just glosses over it so quickly. But it was such a great line of dialogue. That whole movie the dialogue is just on point.
You never do it in real geopolitics. You also never do it in the board game Risk. You get bound down and trying to get those extra 7 armies for capturing Asia, and you are screwed.
There. Yeah, it's Africa or Australia, man. That's where you start. And Africa spreads to South America. That's how you win at Risk. It's Africa or Australia.
South America or Australia, but that's fine. I love you.
I always went with Africa.
Oh, Africa's too big, man. You got to go South America or Australia because there's just 4 territories and then you go wherever you want. But that's just how we play.
Number 2, Josh. Number 2.
Number 2, Jeff, you called this one from 2007. It's No Country for Old Men.
Interesting. If it's number 2, I can't wait to see what number 1 is because I do think that was the most faithful adaptation ever. I'm excited.
You're going to agree with number 1.
Okay.
But for number 2, No Country for Old Men, the Coen brothers, They clearly read Cormac McCarthy's novel and realized they couldn't write anything scarier than what was already on the page. So most of the dialogue is lifted verbatim, including the terrifying gas station coin toss.
It's the gold. To me, it's the gold standard of adaptations, of faithful adaptations. But
faithful adaptations.
All right, number 1, Josh. Blow me away.
That leads us to also a movie I didn't love, but 2005's Sin City. Director Robert Rodriguez didn't just adapt Frank Miller's graphic novel. He essentially held the book up to the camera and pressed record.
Yeah.
It's so accurate that Rodriguez resigned from the Directors Guild just so he could credit Miller as a co-director.
Huh.
Every shadow, every drop of blood, every gritty internal monologue is there. It's the cinematic equivalent of tracing paper drawing.
Wow. I had no idea because I didn't read the graphic novel, but I did read, No Country. Okay, fair enough. And I'm going to go back and look at the graphic novel now because I'm fascinated by it.
Oh, it's the graphic novel is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, Frank Miller's work is just groundbreaking.
Yeah. I'm not I don't need something to be a faithful adaptation. And my biggest issue with No Country was the interesting drama was the battle between Anton Chigurh and Josh Brolin's character. And then Josh Brolin dies off camera, not to Chigurh. And it's like, okay, it worked in the book, but that's not what we were all sort of paying our ducats to come see in the theater. That's not what I'm buying my concessions for, Josh. And I don't think it would have ruined the story to have a fight between Chigurh and Brolin. I think it would have made it a better movie. That's a great list, man. That's a really good list. As always, if you think we missed some, please let us know in the comments. I would love to take a look at other adaptations. I love adaptations. I've done 2 myself, neither of which were faithful. I adapted a book into a television series, and I just recently adapted a book into a movie. Faithful in terms of the theme, but not in terms of the story. And in both cases, the original authors loved it. They had no issues with what I wanted to bring to it. So I think adaptations are fascinating. Please let us know, which ones in the comments. Josh, I think we scratched the surface of Frankenstein, and I think that's the best you can do in an hour with what is really a theme and mental health rich film and book. Any final thoughts for us?
Jeff loved this movie. I didn't think I was going to love it so much. I mean, I'm not typically a fan of Frankenstein just in general. This was a compelling piece of movie making, and I loved every minute of it. Yeah, really great. It's almost a shame that it was just, I don't even know if it got a theatrical release. I think that they just released it on Netflix, and I think that I don't know. It's tough because this is a movie I want to talk about. This is a movie that I don't want to just to be, award show fodder. I wish I would have seen this in the theater, but I don't even think I was given the chance. I agree. It was grand, and it was grand enough that I think it should have been seen in the theater. Yeah. All right. Well, that being said, Josh, thanks as always for watching or listening to Cinemental and our coverage of Frankenstein. If you like this episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also watch clips of Cinemental on YouTube, where we'd love to hear what you would like us to cover next. You can also watch my companion series, The One Thing, where I take a deeper dive into screenwriting, both available on the Large and in Charge channel on YouTube. This has been a Large and in Charge production. For Josh Jones and for David Haverty, who is our editor, we will see you next week.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.